Today on Remington's Inside the Industry, I'll be talking to one of the outdoor industry's real veterans, a man who has overseen such companies as Remington and Cabela's, both of which he served in the role of Chief Executive Officer. Tommy is, as you can imagine, a serious hunter, shooter, and general outdoorsman who has a long history of chasing hunting adventures across the globe. Throw in the fact that he is a generally good guy, and you will see why I enjoy his company, respect his business savvy, and am proud to call him a friend. This podcast is brought to you by Remington Firearms. For more information on the new era of Remington, visit our site at remarms.com. So today I've got somebody that I'm proud to say is a close friend of mine and has been for many years, Tommy Millner, former Chief Executive Officer of Remington and Cabela's. Tommy, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Ken. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's a bitch to get you off the golf course to do this, but I'm happy that you took the time.
I am enjoying getting worse at golf in retirement. It just is a mind-boggling game that is endless frustration.
The golf part or the retirement part?
The golf part. The retirement part is fantastic.
Well, yeah, I think it must be okay because you were just in Argentina, weren't you, a week ago?
I was dove hunting and pigeon hunting and fishing in Entre Rios, north of Buenos Aires, and just had a great shoot with a good group of friends and had a ball.
Now, I can cut this out if I don't like the answer, but I'm hoping you were using Remington.
I actually wasn't, but not by choice. Taking your own gun to South America is quite a challenging ordeal, and just not even worth the effort. So we were left to shoot the guns they had in the hunting camp, and they were not Remingtons, and I had a bunch of jams. Let's just be nice and not mention any names. And I wish I had my 1187 and my 1100. It would have been a whole lot more fun.
You know, look, I can't help but give us a little plug. So I had an outfitter, and he's going to do some stuff for us in the future. just saying why he changed, but he was introduced to me through a friend of mine that's the CEO of Cryptic. And he introduced this guy to me, and he's an outfitter with waterfowl, upland birds, just primarily birds. He doesn't do big game. And he was frustrated because the guns that we were using were an auto that he loans to other people, and he just said they were jamming all the time. And This Butch Whiting from Cryptic said, "You've got to try this Remington V3." And so the guy phoned me. He said, "Look, Ken, I'd like to buy a couple of V3s." And I told him, I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll send you one for free, and you can buy one, and we'll see how it goes." Well, since
I duck hunted earlier this year, Ken, with a V3 in Northern California, and it was just flawless. Yeah. I mean, it's just a fabulous gun. And hats off to you and the team for developing that gun.
I wish I could take credit for that. It was developed before I got there, but it took a second place. I don't know what they did. That it just was, they did nothing to tell the world about it. And in my opinion, it's the best autoloader I've ever shot in my life. I hate cleaning guns more than anything I can think of. And you can just shoot it and shoot it and shoot it and shoot it, which is just fine for me. So this outfitter, he called recently. He'd bought a bunch more, and he said, "Look," he said, "could I get a new barrel for one of them?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem. What's the problem?" He said, "The only problem I've had with the V3 is I drove over the barrel with my truck." So he said, "I think it's still fine, but the rib is a little bent." So anyhow, that's the only thing happening.
In the long history of the Model 870, which can row a boat, shoot a bird, kill a deer, and jack a truck tire up. I mean, that's the history of the 870, so it lives on today.
Yeah, it really is. I'll tell you a quick story about the 870. We were asked, our rep that looks after the Ukraine was asked to provide some information about the 870 because our distributor there was doing a presentation to the military, and of course the military in most countries is also looks after the police force. So they'd asked for testimonials from one of the existing police departments or a couple of them. We got a testimonial from a police department in the U.S., I think it was Nashville Metro, that they'd been using the 870 since 1960 or some crazy thing, and they still had the original ones in some of their vehicles. So they've been there for 50 years now or 60 years, and they're still in use, which is pretty phenomenal, I think.
Well, I just turned 70 years old late last year, and when I was 12 years old, the first thing my father made me work and save my own money to buy was a 12-gauge Remington 870, and I still have it, and it still shoots lights out.
Well, speaking about when you were young, what brought you to the firearms industry in the first place? Because I think you came, if I'm not mistaken, Tommy, you were in the furniture industry.
I was.
How the hell did a furniture guy get into the firearms industry other than we use some nice wood?
Well, when I was at Cabela's, we used to do leadership development work with our high potential folks. And they would always, these young kids would always ask me, well, how did you map your career out? And I just laughed out loud because, my career mapping was, I got a job. I just tried to do it as best I could, not even thinking about what the next job would be. And then another job popped up and I said, okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. So it was a little bit of that. My love of hunting and guns goes back to my childhood. I was raised on the coast of Virginia. We grew up dove hunting, not so much deer hunting because we couldn't use rifles there. The ground was so flat. And the first time I shot a deer with a 12-gauge slug gun, it was a rather uncomfortable thing for a scrawny 15-year-old kid to do, and it hurt like hell. So we just stuck to duck hunting, and we trapped muskrats and shot crows and shot squirrels. And, I just grew up from 11 or 12 years old hunting with friends. My father was not a hunter. But all of my uncles were. So my love of hunting goes back to my childhood. And we were taught to respect guns and keep your guns clean and, all the basics of firearms ownership. And then, went to college and got out of college and didn't have a job and went to work for a bank in my hometown just to have a job. And that turned into a job in the furniture industry as a sales rep, and clicked my heels. And a decade later or so, I was recruited by Clayton, Dubilier and Rice to run a furniture manufacturing business that I had competed against. And our team, we turned this really sick company around. And while we were selling it, I was about 33 years old, 34 years old, something like that. My partners at Clayton, Dubilier and Rice that we own the furniture company with, out of left field, one of the operating partners called me and said, hey, you don't know this, but we're in private negotiations to buy Remington. We figure you probably don't want to stay in the furniture industry and work for the guys that you're selling to, which was correct. And he said, you want to do another deal? Well, the whole time I'm thinking it's Remington shavers. I'm not even thinking it's Remington guns. And I said, well, I don't know a lot about the razor business. He goes, no, it's Remington guns. I said, yes, I'll take the job.
I'll take
And
the
I
job. I don't
literally
care what
didn't
it
even
is.
ask. I didn't even ask him what my salary would be, how much stock I would get. None of that. I didn't even employment agreement. I was so damn grateful to have the chance to run this iconic company that I just said yes, sight unseen. And it was one of the great decisions of my life.
What year was that, Tommy?
That was in 1994.
Okay, I was telling the guys today that I couldn't remember. I said it was either 93 or 97. I thought.
Yeah,
So
it was 94.
Yeah.
And we sold our furniture company. I won't get the months right. In May or June, we closed. And a month later, I was in Wilmington, Delaware, with our team trying to sort out this company that we just bought.
And you were when did Clayton Dubilier sell? Is that 2007, 2008?
2007.
Yeah.
We sold the company to Cerberus, and I stayed for 2 years. You know, I was kind of legally obligated to stay and help with the transition, so I was there for 2 years, and by the grace of God, I got a phone call to be the CEO of Cabela's, which was another fantastic, really fun team of people and great job, and stayed in the outdoor industry. So I got 2 good God winks in my life.
Well, no, you got 3. You met me.
Oh, and you. That's right. Shit, how did I forget that?
I have no idea. You know, look, that's one of the great ones. Yeah, I was at Crosman because I was just trying to think. You know, I met you. I think it must have been 2003 about that when we did the licensing agreement.
That's right.
And that after it was acquired by Cerberus, it turned out the licensing agreement went away because I remember it was so bizarre because I was still at Crosman. I left Crosman in 2012, I think, but the agreement was coming up for renewal, and Cerberus had some young guy, I don't remember what his name was, doing the licensing, and they wanted some ludicrous base guarantee, and I said no, that's just not going to work. We argued about it, talked about it. So finally, I met them in New York at the equity guys that owned us at the time, at their offices, and we had this nice powwow. And so they said to me, well, if you're not going to do this, we're going to just go to China and we'll be in this business ourselves. And
knock yourself out.
That's exactly what I did. I stood up at the meeting and I shook their hand and said, congratulations, you're in the air gun business.
Have fun.
Exactly. And they did. They went into the air gun business. And where is it now? It's right back at Crosman again, where it started. They didn't do well.
Where core competency was.
Yes, exactly. Well, how your days at Crosman, at Remington, kind of walk me through, tell me a little bit about them. Because the industry has changed, as you well know. It's changed quite a bit since then. And of course, Remington's gone through their own challenges.
I thought it was such an interesting challenge because Remington had been owned for 60 years by DuPont. And while DuPont provided stable sources of capital and equipment and all of those good things, it was a rounding error in DuPont's balance sheet and P&L statement. So you've got this Fortune 10 or Fortune 15 enormous chemical company and fibers company that owned this little $300 million business for just legacy reasons. They just owned it because they owned it and the family liked to hunt. But there had never been really any investment in people and innovation and the brand, which was an amazing testament that not neglect, but just kind of nothing. The brand sustained itself over 60 years because of loyal customers. And so when we bought the company, we had to create a company from a company. I mean, we didn't have costing systems that were worth a damn in the factories. We had great quality systems because DuPont was, and safety systems, DuPont was really good at that. But the money that the company made mattered so little that they never invested in financial systems and costing systems that were relevant. And we needed to upgrade a lot of people. So it was quite a challenge. And I viewed it as the ultimate challenge of let's restore one of the world's great brands to the position that it deserves. So we invested in R&D, we invested in people. We were a very early adopter in 1996 of SAP, so we did enterprise-wide ERP systems, which was really hard, heavy lifting. We focused on marketing. Remington had never been involved in the industry at all. Because DuPont didn't want to draw attention to itself. So we got very involved with the industry and led on a number of issues, got involved on Capitol Hill, and it was just more fun than a damn barrel of monkeys. And when we started turning the company around, I think everybody that worked there woke up every day and thought, this is almost a 200-year-old company. Number one, don't screw it up. But number two, let's do something with this. This is an American institution. And so the work that we did, I think collectively, all of us, including our partners in New York, we're so proud of the work that we did and the creation of this incredible company. And then to watch it get destroyed was one of the most painful things in my life.
Yeah. After it was sold, it was not pretty, but
no, my 2 years there were the worst 2 years of my career.
Yeah, well, we're resurrecting. I wish they.
I know you are, and that's exciting. I'm so pleased by what you're doing. The departure from New York. I wish we had been able to do it. Operating in an old facility with a union workforce in a state that couldn't stand us. The city of New York litigated us. It was just a terrible place to do business.
Oh, it's still a terrible place to do business. I think
nothing's changed.
Yeah, it's, if anything, I think it's gotten worse. We're being sued along with 30 other manufacturers by the city of Rochester and the city of Buffalo because we sold too many guns in their cities. Well, excuse me. Look, we're probably the most. I can't think of an industry that has more challenges to sell their product and is regulated than the firearms industry. So if anybody wants to buy a gun, it has to go through FFL after FFL after FFL and a NICS check, et cetera, before somebody can buy a gun. So how is it possible somebody can buy, if there's too many guns being sold in a city, maybe they should clean up their city because people are buying guns for defense, not just to own them.
Well, this happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. We were among every other company in the industry of note. 35 U.S. cities sued us, alleging we were responsible for the cost of homicides and shootings, to include the EMT costs, the cleaning of the sidewalks, every aspect of gun violence was our problem. And I think without any exception, those 35 mayors, all of them went to jail on something else, and we prevailed in the lawsuit. But, nothing is new under the sun. This is exactly what they tried to do. And we prevailed in those early days of our ownership of the company.
Well, I was going to say a few minutes ago during DuPont's era, they spent they spent a lot of time and effort and money, a lot of money. You spent the time and effort, but during their many years, they spent a lot of effort in new machinery and quality and so. Boy, I'm telling you, it would have been nice if they'd have spent something on the buildings. However, if they had great buildings, I'm not. I would have been a. It would have been a very difficult decision to move, but the decision to move out of New York was really simple. You know, first of all, from the support that you get from the government that is non-existent, and then the buildings. The buildings, we had 42 buildings, separate buildings. Of course, they were attached somehow, and 22 of those buildings were built between 1914 and 1916. There's not a day went by ever since I've been involved with the company where something wasn't wrong with the buildings, whatever that was. And just the operating of those is horrific compared to a new modern building. So moving out of there the decision was very easy. You know, that it's unfortunate for the families, the legacy of Remington there, but once again, you know, moving was not a difficult decision at all. And and even the union had nothing to do with it because the union, you know, the collective bargaining agreement is fine. But when you're constantly unsure of what the environment's going to look like from a political standpoint, and when you're constantly fixing new buildings, it's unbelievable. And to top it all off, I had somebody, you know, once we announced that we were moving, I had all kinds of people saying, wow, they didn't do this, they didn't do this. You know, it was
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. It was out there every time we made a decision that the politicians in New York, upstate New York, downstate New York, they could have come at any time and said, look, we want to make sure that you don't move. We need to talk about ways we can keep you here. Is it a new building you need? What is it that you need? Not a word. But boy, I'll tell you, a bunch of fucking crybabies when it was announced we were leaving. Yeah, it's
unbelievable. And
but
you
anyway.
know, sadly, when we owned the company, because it was a private equity business, we simply didn't have the debt capacity to make the bet to move any of our factories, Ilion or Lone Oak or any of them. It was just not doable from a math standpoint. So we didn't have any serious issues with the collective bargaining group in Ilion, other than the mine workers were constantly trying to organize the ammunition factory in Arkansas.
Lone Oak, yeah.
They failed all three times they tried and failed big.
Yeah.
The workforce in Arkansas was just utterly fantastic.
Yeah, you know, we had no problem, but the position that we were in is that, you know, so you left there 2017, you know, or not 17.
Yeah.
So here we are 15 years later, almost 17 years later. So imagine if those buildings get 17 years older than when you were there.
I can't even imagine.
It's just, there was just, regardless of the debt, there was no option. It was move or fail. So it was an easy choice.
Absolutely. And as you know, I called you and said, man, I'm so proud of you. You got a fresh start down here in a state where I live that's glad to have you. Our state will not litigate you. You don't have to worry about that. You're among friends now.
Yes, which is, I mean, I see that day in and day out.
Of course,
I hear from different people, different political people in Georgia. They're very, very happy to have us. And the other nice thing is that because there are a number of manufacturers, firearms manufacturers in
Glock
Georgia.
has been in North Atlanta for years.
Yeah,
decades.
Glock is in Newnan, which is just 15 minutes from where we are, 20 minutes.
Right.
Great guys, great company. But of course, Daniel Defense is there's just a lot of firearms companies, and what you get from that is you get a lot of subcontractors, you get a lot of smaller contractors around, just like the automotive companies do with all their subcomponents. So
Yeah,
it's
just
easy
like
for us
Gun
to get
Valley
parts.
in Brescia, in Italy,
Yeah,
or the critical mass that was created 200 and some years ago between New York State and Massachusetts in the early days of Colt and Smith and Wesson and
right,
Remington and
right.
others.
So I mean, we've got I don't have to go anywhere to get heat treatment, so I don't, if something happens to our furnaces, it's pretty easy to send them out. I no longer have to do the oxide in our own building, which is a godsend because that's a nightmare anyway. So
Yes.
we just get to do everything, and it makes a big difference. So that's the political environment's great. Workforce is all there. They have no, they have skills, but they don't have firearms. So that becomes a real training process. But we'll get through that. So we're excited about that.
Well, you should be. You should
What
be.
a,
It's a cool.
but then you went off into the retail business, and and I know you did very well with Cabela's. You built Cabela's. You did all kinds of good things. So
Well,
compare
that one
today
was.
to those days.
I was literally in a Wendy's drive-through getting a Diet Coke in Greensboro, North Carolina, and my phone rang, and it was a guy I knew in the private equity business. His name was Steve Murray, and Steve ran a huge private equity firm called CCMP. And I'd known him from a prior life, kind of casually, but I knew him pretty good. And he said, "You want to be the CEO of Cabela's?" And I said, "Steve, this isn't funny. You know I'm languishing here with the Cerberus guys. It's really not fun, and I don't know why I decided to stay. They don't listen to me. I'm here in title only. Um, that's not really funny. Plus, if they're looking at me, a guy with no retail experience at all, never worked 1 second of my teenage years or my adult years in a retail store, then that's a sorry commentary on how good the recruiter is." And he laughed and he goes, "No, they need somebody that knows the industry, has got a good business head on his shoulders, and is ready for a big challenge. And I thought about you. Can I throw your name in the hat?" Well, Steve had been a director of Cabela's before the company went public, 5 years before I came on board, and I said sure, and one thing led to another, and son of a gun if they didn't offer me the job. And so here I am, 55 years old. My wife and I had built a home we were going to die in North Carolina. And I had to say, "Hey, babes, we're going to move to Sydney, Nebraska." And she's a Georgia girl. She didn't even know where Nebraska was.
That was a culture shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, I said, "Look, it's north of Kansas and south of South Dakota." And that didn't help any more than telling her where Addis Ababa was. But we decided to do one more big adventure in our life, and we sold our home and moved to Sydney. I think the stock price at the IPO was $30 a share. That was 5 years before I joined, and it had fallen to $4.75 a share. So I went to the company, and I'll tell you a funny story. Few people know this. Now a lot will know it.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
my first day on the job, I asked that, the top people in the company, and it was about 100 people, go to our big meeting room, and I've got to address the troops. I'm the new guy there, and so I go out there and I kind of give them here's what we're going to do the next 3 months. I'm going to do a deep dive. I want you to all be candid. We got a lot of work to do, and they're all looking at me, and I finish up and I go back to my office and I close the door and I dry heaved in the trash can. And I thought the sense of, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? This is a big ass company. It's a public company. And I really don't know what I'm doing other than just business sense. And in the course of my life, I always use those kind of moments as something that really motivated me. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to figure this shit out. And we got a great group of people here. And I know the industry and I know the vendors. I don't know how retail stores work, but I can figure that out. And we just the next day set about to do our work. And it was so much fun. Everybody's stock options were underwater. The team was totally demoralized because you know how it is when a company's performance is deteriorating. It doesn't mean people aren't working hard. They're working really hard, and they're not getting bonuses, and it gets really just terrible from a mood standpoint inside the company. And people do their worst work when they're losing.
Yes, always.
So, you know, when the stock price went from $4.75 to $8, it was like, well, shit, maybe this guy knows what he's doing. And then it went to 16 and then 30. And then, man, we had 35,000 employees. You get 35,000 people rowing the boat in the same direction. My job became get out of the way. We've got a strategy. It's working. Let's just get the boat going faster. And so over the decade we were there, we more than doubled the size of the company. We built, store count went from 30 to 90, expanded greatly in Canada and in the U.S. Our bank doubled in size. And we ultimately sold the company. Remember, we came in at $4.75 a share, and we sold the company for $63.50. So financially, and for all of our team, it was just and our shareholders who we worked for, it was really a grand slam home run. Yeah. Sadly, decisions that were made after closing by Bass Pro, contrary to what they promised the city and the folks that worked there. We had, I don't know, 2,500 people in the corporate office. They basically let all of them go, which I still don't understand to this day. So it kind of devastated the community. But over time, the community rebounded. And while not doing as well as it was when we were there because our payroll was so big, it's doing fine. So it was just, what a run, Ken. I just can't even tell you how much fun it was.
Well, look, it is fun. I mean, I've had the same with a couple of companies. It really is fun. But you touched on something that I think is, in business, personally, I think is really, really important. I think it's probably one of the most critical things. If people wake up in the morning and their cup is half empty and they're kind of down, they're whatever it is, they're going to go to bed at night and not be one bit frickin' better. If people wake up in the morning and with the attitude that I'm going to just give it everything I've got, I'm going to do the best I can, I'm going to enjoy my day, I'm going to do everything I can to fix those issues, whatever it is, they'll go to bed at night being much happier. And if you get a group of people like that, it doesn't take long for the attitude to change. And when the attitude changes, everything magically seems to change with it.
And I remember looking at the team a couple of months in and saying, guys, I think the stock price was like $5 then. I said, we're going to have a $50 stock price. They looked at me like I was a UFO ET from Jupiter, like I'm a lunatic. But to your point, the job of the leader is to take people to heights of performance, both individually and collectively, that they never imagined they could get to. And when you start on that journey and the results start happening, I mean, it's magic and it's so much fun. It's more fun than making money. It's more fun than anything. It's probably like being the coach of the Super Bowl team, to watch just this group of people make magic. And we did. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in fairness to Bass Pro, I think the acquisition has been great for them because they were able to buy 90 more stores to sell the boats that they produce and all of the fishing stuff. Sadly, it wasn't great for hunting, but because they're not a hunting company, they're a fishing company that's, by the way, in the hunting business. But we were a hunting company that happened to sell a few boats and some fishing stuff. So I think it's been great for them, which is all that you hope for.
Yeah, no, I think it's been good for them. It's a change for sure, but I think it also opened up opportunities for other people as well. Like a mutual friend of ours that you introduced me to, Paul Stone.
They're going to do great at Sportsman. There's an opportunity for them.
There's an opportunity for them, and you know he has a lot of things to clean up, but I think there's a good opportunity for him. And
I do too.
You know, you met your friend, mentioned your friend Steve, and it popped into my mind that we have another mutual friend in the private equity business, Steve. Have you heard from him? Talked to him in recent years?
I talked to him several months ago. We were going to go hunting. He's a member of a club in upstate New York, and we were going to go shoot some birds. And I had to call him and cancel. I had something come up, a board meeting changed, and I couldn't make it. He's doing great. Same million ideas a second. Very creative guy, super smart, and has done in his businesses. You know, you were involved with him. He just does well every time he touches something.
He buys well.
Yeah, he's a great buyer of businesses.
Yeah.
And his success in Magpul is extraordinary.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember having the conversation with him before, and he said that their EBITDA was so large, there's no way anybody would buy it. It's
Correct.
Just impossible. So
So
I haven't
you own
talked
it
to him
forever
for a
and
while.
don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's why I said just take a great big nice dividend annually and
which
carry
is
on.
really what we did at Remington. Clayton and Dubelier, they normally would hold a business 5 to 7 years, like most private equity firms. We owned the company together for 15 years. And it was the difficulty of selling a gun company. We got very close a couple of times, but people got weak-kneed at the end. And it didn't happen. So we just dividended to the shareholders multiple times during the ownership. And while not tax efficient, it's still money.
Yeah, look, that's a real challenge. That's a real challenge in our industry now, even more so than it was, you know, when
the banking system
it.
has been weaponized against you and your customers, which I read about every day. Yep. I mean, how disgraceful is that?
Right. It's not just against us, but it's against so many companies. It is disgraceful. I would love. There's nothing I would like to see more than a class action lawsuit against these assholes. You know, because we couldn't even at Remington. We wanted to open up a cash account when Rem Arms started. We were turned down by many banks. Exactly.
Nobody would take your money.
We say, look, we're not trying to borrow money. All we want to do is make deposits, write checks. Nope. So to me, there should be a lawsuit against that, because it's happened to everybody in the firearms industry.
And that happened because, you know, the Obamas and the Clintons and now the Biden administrations pressure the banks through their regulators not to do business with a whole legal industry. But yet they willingly take the revenues that are gigantic from tobacco, which kills so many people, and the alcohol industry. They don't hesitate to take that money because the tax base is so big.
Yep, exactly. So I'd love to see a class action lawsuit. I think there'd be nothing more interesting than that. And I think there's just beyond a shadow of a doubt that case would be won.
Agree.
Anyway, that's water under the bridge. We'll see what happens in the future. But I think one of the big challenges today, and you see it, so many companies in this industry, and as you know, I've been involved somewhat with the automotive industry a little bit, mostly from a driving standpoint, but what you see is the same sort of people that got involved in the industry. They were people that were passionate about firearms or passionate about cars, performance vehicles, and they built up these businesses.
They were hobbies that turned into businesses.
Exactly. And many of them were not businessmen. Most of them weren't. But now the businesses have grown to fairly sizable businesses. Well, in the firearms industry, they have a real tough time selling them now, for the very reason you said. Most private equity won't touch us because they can't get any financing. Plus, the people that are loaning to them, that are in their deals
have these exclusions.
Have the exclusions, exactly. So that cuts those people out. The private offices that that we know so much about, they are not afraid of it, but once again, they don't want their name in the public, so they don't do it. So it's a real challenge. You want to sell it, and what's it sell at? Well, 3 times, 4 times, maybe.
So you just hold them for a long time and
exactly
and pay dividends
and make money with them.
Yeah.
So we've got to get our factory going, and we'll be just fine. Oh, by the way, I'll send you some pictures soon because they're pouring the concrete on the floors.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it is.
And then when you get up and running, it's only like an hour and 15 minutes from where I live, so I'll drive over. I'd just love to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. Our plant manager that you don't know, but he's this young guy. I don't know how old he is, 50-ish, 40 something. He is just so excited. He told me, he said, Ken, because I moved him from Ilion. He was a plant manager at Ilion. And he said, I'm so excited to be able to go to a plant that I know the factory is not going to have problems with relatively new machinery and just make the best guns in the world. He said, I'm just dying to do it. Just a great guy. So we're excited about it. What else look, the retail industry has changed dramatically, I think, even in the short time that you've been out of it. The percentage that's sold online today versus then, and the customer service that you get in the stores, etc., drives that. But I think there's been a huge change. And you sat on the board, I know, for Best Buy. So there's been, I think, a lot of changes in the retail industry.
So I'll give you a bit of a long answer. One of the triggering event that led us to sell Cabela's to Bass Pro was we were attacked by an activist investor in New York, a very famous one, and they play pretty tough. And their argument was they just looked at the math. We didn't have any debt to speak of. We own 90 stores. Almost all of them we paid for. So there wasn't borrowed money against them. So there's an asset you can borrow money against if you wanted to attack a company. And we owned a bank. And the bank was 40-50% of our net income. Well, that suppressed our trading multiple because banks don't trade like as a multiple of PE like retail businesses do. So their argument was, we break the company up, you've got assets people can borrow against to finance a big transaction, all of which they were right. What led us not to recommend to the board that we fight these guys was the simple fact that our vendors, over whom we had enormous leverage in price negotiations and product selection for decades, was slipping away, because all of our big vendors, especially in apparel, not so much in hard goods at the time, but in apparel, which was a huge part of the business, were starting to sell directly from their own B2C websites. And so when your vendor is your competitor and is basically determining what price things are sold at, you can't grow your margins. And if you can't grow your margins in a retail business, it's very problematic, because your costs are constantly rising from inflation, and people want pay raises, and electricity goes up, and you name it. So we saw the writing on the wall that the dominance that we had with our vendors was slipping away very fast. In fact, I won't tell you who the vendor was, but it was a large apparel vendor, and we were in a dispute with them to get more co-op and for a promotion. And their CEO looked at me and said, "Do you realize that our website business is 4 times larger than our business with you? So if you're asking me to walk away, it's not a problem." And that was one of those oh shit moments, because heretofore, before the web, that conversation would have never happened. They would have buckled, given us the co-op or whatever we wanted, and we'd have gone on down the road and grown our margins. And they would have grown their business with us. So that whole dynamic, when it came to play, it was plainly obvious we could have fought the activist, but we would have lost in the long run. So, the way that my experience at Best Buy was a great one, because the CEO that asked me to join the board, the company was in absolute turmoil. It was a mess. There was a belief that it could go belly up. And he had a very simple philosophy. That was, the stores have to be refreshed, and we're going to partner with our vendors to have an Apple shop and a Microsoft and a Sony shop and a Samsung shop, and they'll pay for that space. You watch. We're going to match Amazon on the spot, dollar for dollar. And we're going to pay for that investment in price by very aggressively getting unnecessary cost out of the company. And that strategy ignited what is called on the street Renew Blue. Blue is Best Buy's color. And Renew Blue just turned the whole company around in a very short period of time. And the vendors played ball and won, and we won. And we were able to get billions of dollars of cost out of this company and invest it right back into price. And as it turned out, we had an enormous untapped advantage against Amazon, which was the Geek Squad. Technology is great, except when it doesn't work, guys like us can't fix it. You can't even install your own TV anymore. It's that complicated. So here we have this untapped, huge asset that allows us to solve people's technology problems, which Amazon didn't have, still doesn't have. So those came together, and it was really fun being a part of that turnaround.
Well, you've been involved with Big Green now, and
Big Green,
Blue,
Big Blue,
Big Blue, and what was Cabela's? Yeah, Big C.
We were green. We were green.
Oh, okay. Well, big, yeah, green, perfect. Uh,
Yep.
all right. So, Tommy, you're got any hunts planned? Anything good coming up?
You know, I just don't hunt critters anymore, Ken.
Well, but
And it's
bird
not for
hunting.
lack of desire. Not four-legged critters. I love hunting in Africa, but I've kind of shot everything I wanted to shoot. I've been able to hunt really great stuff all over the world. And there's just was 5 years ago, there's just kind of nothing else on my list. And I don't just kill to kill. Um, so my hunting has just kind of moved from four-legged critters. I've always loved bird hunting, and I'm not a great rifle shot. I'm a really good bird hunter and a good shotgun guy. So that's where my passion is. I love to fish, but I'm horrible. Like I don't know how to tie the knots, and so I can
Yeah,
fish, and all,
but Tommy, that's
but
why you have a guide to tie the
I know
knots.
I just don't go fishing without a guide,
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
we don't have really world class. We have everything else in Georgia. We got good bass fishing and crappie fishing and all that, but for a great fly stream for big trout, that just doesn't exist here. So I love doing that and do it whenever I get a chance.
Oh well, we've got to go someplace because I'm the same as you. You and I'd make good partners fly fishing. I don't do the knots and stuff like that. I want a
I
guide.
don't know how. I wouldn't
Yeah,
even try.
I can do a basic one, but that's kind of about it. But I just took it up. I really like it. Went to a great place last year, the Gunnison Gorge, which was just fantastic. Probably go to a couple places, and like you, look, I still like the big game, but I do because I'm mostly in North America because I use the meat. My freezer's full of game meat. But the bird hunting is very social,
It is,
and
and I
and you
love that at this
yeah
stage of life.
yeah you can go out with some friends, and I spent 3 days quail hunting at a plantation in Georgia, and we just had the time of our life. You go out and you enjoy it. It's not hard work. You don't have to be in great shape.
Well,
You
I
know,
feel like you. I feel guilty because I live in a county in Georgia that's called the deer capital of the world, and all my buddies say, "Come on and go deer hunting. We got a stand for you." And I just have to say, look, sitting in a deer stand on a cold morning by myself, it's just not my deal anymore.
yeah, I don't sit in
Glad
a.
it's your deal, but it's not
I
my deal
yeah,
anymore.
I don't. I hate stands. I've never sat in them. I would sooner be out walking. But to me, one of the great hunts now is to go duck hunting, and the outfitter, if they've got a little kitchen in their blind, cook a meal,
It's
have
the
nice hot
best.
coffee. It's just fantastic.
That's
You know,
how we hunted geese and ducks in Nebraska. We had the big pits out in the cornfields,
yeah, yeah,
and they're cooking coffee and sausage and eggs. And I mean, and
yeah.
it's 40 below outside. I mean, it was the best.
Yeah, it's perfect. I think so too. And I don't even want to go duck hunting where you have to really rough it very much. I don't want to get up and lay the frickin' decoys out and all that shit. I want to just go in, and I don't care how cold it is, get in the blind, have a heater on, enjoy a nice hot cup of coffee, and shoot some ducks. To me,
My
that's
only
absolutely
caveat
perfect.
is that I made the mistake of hunting my first crocodile in Africa when I was 64 years old. I'm glad I didn't start doing that earlier in my life, or I'd still be going over there to hunt crocs. That's the most fun.
You,
That and
you,
say
you
buffalo hunting. It's unbelievably fun
look.
and dangerous.
I shot my first buffalo last year. I've never really had a desire, but I was on a hunt in Africa, and I said, "Yeah,
Oh,
let's do that." And we got to 25 yards away. And I'm going back again this year. I'll hunt another buffalo. It was just unbelievable because
the great news is if you've been 25 yards away from a buffalo, you and I have both done that. You don't have to worry about having a heart attack because your heart's already gone through 300 beats a minute when you're in that situation. So something else is going to get us, probably not a heart attack.
well, I was when I was doing it. The guide I was with, who's become a friend of mine now, He told me, he said, because we'd shot a lot of plains game before we went and spent a day plus day and a half stalking this buffalo. And he said, look, he said, you're kind of, one of the best shots I've ever been with. But when we were setting up to shoot this buffalo, it was 25 yards away, and there was 3 of them looking right at us. And he put his arm on my shoulder, and he leaned over, and he said, Ken, this in his South African voice, he says, don't fuck up this shot.
Yeah, don't miss.
Yeah, exactly. So it was good, and I didn't. One of the guys that I'm sitting here with, and then I got to wind it up, Tommy, is I'm with the Safari Classics guys, and I believe your croc hunt maybe was with Shafudi Safaris.
Did I? Yeah, with Shafudi. Yeah, we were on the near Manu Pools on the Zambezi in western Zimbabwe, right on the Zambia was right on the other side of the river, and Keith Wall was my guide. I think he works for another company now, but man, did we have a great hunt. Yeah, it was fantastic.
So Tim Dancliffe and Dave Fulson were partners with Shafudi. They do all their filming and stuff like that at the time. So Dave saw your name. He said, I'm sure he hunted with us. So you did.
I did. And the kid's name was Keith Wall. Keith was about 30 years old at the time. Yeah. And one day we walked 12 miles tracking this old Dugga boy and got him. But I thought, man, how are we going to get out of here? And we did.
I did that one time. I went one time that I was there. Same thing. Spent all day tracking this giant eland, and I have no idea how far we went, but we were a long ways away.
A long ass way.
So
and you're thinking, how the fuck am I going to get back?
Exactly. And the PH, he said to the tracker, he said, "Okay, go get the truck." The guy ran. We've been walking all frickin' day long from sun up to sundown. And this tracker took off and ran to pick up the Jeep and drive it back to us.
And they're hunting like they're in their own backyard. So
yeah. And
we don't know where we are, but they do.
Yeah, exactly. Tommy, I gotta go.
See you, buddy.
Close this. But this was great. Love you too. Thanks very much for the time. Let's catch up again soon.
See ya.
All right, buddy. Thanks.